Well, I'm in my car, and sitting next to me is Bob DeWitt, so that means it must be time for another Day Trippin' with Bob DeWitt episode. Bob, where are we going today?
We are going to Danville, Iowa. We're going to be seeing the museum, Pen Pal Museum for Anne Frank. And we're going to see Janet Hessler. She's going to give us details and tell us what that's about. Really interesting story. So Janet will be able to tell you more, and we're heading there now.
That's going to be great, and I want to thank you for tuning in. I guess tuning in. Is that what they call it on the internet?
It's tuning in.
All right.
Yeah.
I know I'm broadcasting it is. Podcasting, it may be a little different, but you're watching, and that's the most important thing. And I want to let you know that this is sponsored by Griner Auto Body of Washington, Iowa, using state-of-the-art techniques and decades of experience to get your car back on the road after an accident. Car Doctor of Washington, Iowa. No matter who Frankensteined it, they can fix and clean and customize it. McDonald Boneyard of Keota, Iowa, for all of your farm equipment and auto recycling needs. Hinshaw Trailer Sales of Richland, Iowa. You need a trailer? They've got your trailer, and they fix what they sell and don't in their full-time repair shop. Girling Repair of Whitfield, Iowa. If your mower is dead, call Fred, your Husqvarna, Aaron's, and Gravely dealer. B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops. And Blue Dog Lawn Care of Wayland, Iowa, for all of your residential and commercial lawn care needs. And Bob, when the snow starts flying again, they remove that for you too.
That's a good thing.
That is. And they all present Southeast Iowa Today. I'm John Bain, author of Christie's Journey, The Beat Goes On, and your host. Let's head to Danville.
Let's go.
Janet, thank you so much for having Bob and I here today at the Anne Frank Pen Pal Museum in Danville, Iowa. And you have a little introduction that you'd like to share with us.
I do. That starts the story of the exhibit. This exhibit tells the story of two families who lived more than an ocean apart. One family would become one of the most famous families of the World War II era. The other family's almost unknown. The families had very different backgrounds and led very different lives, yet for a brief period, these families were connected through a pen pal relationship between the two daughters in each family. The exhibit will take you briefly to Germany before and during the Nazi era, and then to Nazi-occupied Holland. You'll learn this part of the story through one family in particular, the Frank family, whose daughter Anne's diary is the best known account of the Holocaust. The exhibit will also keep you right here in Danville and the surrounding area, and you will learn about life in this part of Iowa during the Great Depression and World War II. Historical events did not allow the pen pal relationship between the Frank sisters of Amsterdam and the Wagner sisters of Danville to continue beyond the exchange of a few letters. As you view the exhibit, think about what each of these girls might have shared with her pen pal about the great changes taking place in their lives. So our exhibit is based on a timeline, and above the timeline is what was going on in Europe. Below the timeline is what was going on in Danville and the surrounding area. So of course this is Otto and Edith Frank. And we follow on, talks about the Hitler Youth Movement with the children in Europe. What things were going on in Danville, threshing bees, and there was a fire in Danville during this time period. We get to the 1930s, and already in 1933, Dachau was the first concentration camp built.
And if people out there in today's world sometimes find it hard to believe the history that took place, and it's all of our jobs to never let people forget that history.
That's right, and to think it started that early.
Yes.
Opekta was Otto Frank's company that he started in Germany.
And what exactly was the company?
They made spices, they packaged spices, and they made pectin, the ingredient in jam.
Okay.
Gels jam. Of course, when the Nazis invaded Germany, at that point in time, he did try to get papers to come to the United States, but like everybody else from Europe trying to do that, they were never processed. So he took his family and his business and moved to Amsterdam.
and knowing their world was, he obviously sensed their world was changing, and not in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. They thought Amsterdam would be a safe location, a country that would be safe. In this display, my dad was at Dachau the day after liberation.
Oh, really?
These are items he brought back with him from Germany. He
Wow.
was in Patton's division.
So we have a World War II German helmet and an auxiliary visor hat.
Visor hat, yeah. And
Wow.
a field cap. A small pistol, a pocket pistol, a German pocket pistol. And then on the bottom are the wooden shoes. The picture here has them in Auschwitz Museum. That is what the concentration people, the Jews and the gypsies that were in the concentration camp, that's what they were given to wear on their feet when they arrived at the camp.
That's just horrible.
Not very comfortable.
No. It's amazing that your father was able to bring back all
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah, it was.
And he knew he was fighting for world freedom.
Yep. Yes, he was. Like all the servicemen, he was lucky that he came back home. So many died over there.
Yeah.
So then in this corner, this is Miss Birdie, the teacher that started the pen pal relationship.
Now, she had to be quite a lady.
She was. We have a newspaper article of her traveling to Europe in 1914 as a single woman doing that. It is amazing. Wow.
And her name was Birdie Matthews.
Birdie Matthews. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So with the correspondence exchange, of course, this is a picture of Anne Frank, and this is Juanita Wagner, who Anne wrote to.
I want to zoom in on those just a little bit. Pardon me.
No.
And how old were the girls at that age?
They were 12.
12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I have a granddaughter that's 12.
Yeah.
And that's Miss Birdie when she was a little more seasoned.
Yes, yeah. She had retired from teaching by then, and she was an amazing lady.
I guess so. And how long did she live? Do you know? Put you on the spot there, didn't I?
Yeah.
Well, we'll figure that out. I'll tell you what, one of the neat things about doing these podcasts, when I ask questions like that, do a little research and I can put it up on the screen when I'm editing it.
Well, she was born in 1880 and she died in 1974.
Well, there you go. See, you had the information all the time, Jan.
So these are the letters here. They were both written. Margot wrote to Betty Wagner, Juanita's sister, and Anne wrote to Juanita. Both letters were written April 29th, 1940.
Wow.
The letter Anne sent is, Dear Juanita, I did receive your letter and want to answer you as quickly as possible. Margot and myself are the only children in our house. My grandma is living with us. My father has an office and mother's busy at home. I have not far from school and I am sitting in the 5th class. We have no hour classes. We may do what we prefer. Of course, we must get to a certain goal. Your mother will certainly know this system. It is called Montessori. We have little work at home. On the map, I looked again and found the name Burlington. I did ask a girlfriend of mine if she would like to communicate with one of your friends. She wants to do it with a girl about my age, not with a boy. I shall write her address underneath. Did you yourself write the letter I received from you, or did your mother do it? I include a postcard from Amsterdam and shall continue to do that. Collecting picture cards, I have already about 800. A child I used to be at school with went to New York and she did write a letter to our class some time ago. In case you and Betty get a photo, do send a copy, as I am curious to know how you look. My birthday is the 12th of June. Kindly let me know yours. Perhaps one of our friends will write first to my girlfriend, for she also cannot write English, but her father or mother will translate the letter. Hoping to hear from you, I remain your Dutch friend, Anneliese Marie Frank.
Wow.
And this is the postcard she sent. Now this is Margot, Anne's older sister, and this is a young picture of Juanita and Betty Wagner.
Margot and Anne really resemble each other.
Yes, yeah, they did. I won't read Margot's whole letter, but you can just tell the age difference of the girls. We often listen to the radio as times are very exciting. Having a frontier with Germany and being a small country, we never feel safe. In our class, most of the children communicate with one or the other, so I do not know children who would want to take up correspondence. I only have 2 cousins, boys living at Basel, Switzerland. For American ideas, this is not far, but for us it is. We have to travel through Germany, which we cannot do, or through Belgium and France, and in that we cannot do either. It is war, and no visas are given. So the letters were written April 29, 1940. The Nazis invaded May 10th, 1940. So it's really a miracle we have the one letter that we do have.
And it's definitely more proof of what was going on.
Yeah.
Because for some reason in 2024, there's people out there that think this didn't happen, which just is a real head scratcher for me.
Which is why we need to have museums like this. Yeah. So these were 2 more letters, classmates of Juanita, who wrote over to girls in Anne and Marco's classes. So things began to change. I know the girls were able to finish the school year, but by the fall, they would have to attend the Jewish school. They weren't allowed to go to the public Montessori school anymore. By January 1941, Dutch Jews are forbidden to access movie theaters or public transportation. By April 1941, all Jews in Holland are forced to wear a yellow star like this with the word Yod on it. If you lived in Germany, your star would say Jude, J-U-D-E. By December 1941, Jews are forbidden to own their own business. So by this time period, Otto would be selling his business. He sold it to 2 of his employees, but as far as the Nazi government was concerned, he sold his business.
Wow.
I think this is an interesting view of the dark area is the Nazi-controlled countries in 1942. It's just hard to believe that that many countries were involved.
Yes.
By January 1942, the Wannsee Conference took place, and that's on that back table behind you. Okay. It was the final solution. How are they going to get rid of all these people? That happened in January. So by the spring of 1942, mass deportation really amped up and began.
It just seems insane.
Yeah, yes it does.
And it was.
It was.
Yeah.
June 12th, of course, Anne received her famous diary. Anne was a very gifted writer. It's what she wanted to do when she grew up. And that's what her folks gave her, was the famous diary. I'm sure by this time Otto and Edith Frank were getting ready to go into hiding. Probably every day when Otto went to work, he took a few more things with him. They didn't tell the girls for obvious reasons. They didn't want anybody else to know. But on July 7th, Margot received a call-up notice to go to a work camp. So that night, as we see here, that Anne wrote in her diary, things happened quickly. Father finally came home around 5 o'clock, and we called Mr. Klingman to ask if he could come by that evening. Mr. Van Dam left and went to get Miep. Miep arrived and promised to return later that night, taking with her a bag full of shoes, dresses, jackets, underwear, and stockings. After that, it was quiet in our apartment. None of us felt like eating. It was still hot, and everything was very strange. Miep and Jan Gies came at 11. Miep, who's worked for Father's company since 1933, has become a close friend, and so has her husband, Jan. Once again, shoes, stockings, books, and underwear disappeared into Miep's bag and Jan's deep pocket. At 11:30, they too disappeared. I was exhausted, and even though I knew it would be my last night in my own bed, I fell asleep right away, and I didn't wake up until Mother called me at 5:30 the next morning. Fortunately, it wasn't as hot as Sunday. A warm rain fell throughout the day. The 4 of us were wrapped in so many layers of clothes it looked as if we were going off to spend the night in a refrigerator. And all that just so we could take more clothes with us. No Jew in our situation would dare leave the house with a suitcase full of clothes. Margot stuffed her school bag with school books, went to get her bicycle, and with Miep leading the way, rode off into the great unknown. At any rate, that's how I thought about it, since I still didn't know where our hiding place was. At 7:30, we too closed the door behind us. Morchi, my cat, was the only living creature I said goodbye to. According to a note we left for Mr. Goldschmidt, she was to be taken to the neighbors who would give her a good home. The strip beds, the breakfast things on the table, the pound of meat for the cat in the kitchen, all of these created the impression that we'd left in a hurry. But we weren't interested in impressions. we just wanted to get out of there, to get away and reach our destination in safety. Nothing else mattered. So I've never been to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, but from all of our research, we know it was a bookcase that covered the secret hiding entrance.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So, just like the previous exhibit, on the right-hand side of the wall, above the timeline is what was going on in Europe, and a lot of Anne's writings, and she was a very gifted writer for her age. Below the timeline is what was going on in the United States. On the left-hand side, we call that our home front. What was happening in Danville and Burlington, Iowa during this time period? So it talks about rationing and the Iowa Ordnance Plant. We had a Danville citizen who had a patent on an automated post hole digger, and the government hired him to dig all the post holes around the Iowa Ordnance Plant.
I'll be darned.
So,
While you were reading Anne's diary segment there, I was thinking, what a smart young lady, wise and intelligent beyond her years of most people her age at that time.
Yeah, and you'll notice by the quotes we have in here, she was always so positive, you know, to be in hiding for 2 years and a month, but she was always positive. So the 8 beams represent the 8 people that were in hiding.
Wow.
On March 7th, she writes, "At such moments, I don't think about all the misery, but about the beauty that still remains."
Wow. I really appreciate you being her voice today.
Well, this area back here represents the upper storage area. I always explain to people when they come through, the first thing the family did was put blackout curtains on the windows so nobody could see in, but they couldn't see out. So it was this upper storage area, which right here we have a picture of. It would be this area right here. Anne and Peter would often come up here just to get away. You know, they had no private room, bedroom. Anne shared it with a dentist. So they had no private space. So this would often be the place that they would come. Plus it was the only window they could look out to see what season it was. They would look out often at the chestnut tree.
And they probably had to be concerned how they looked out so that they would not be seen from the street below.
Right. And during the day, when people were in the office space, you know, they couldn't run water, they couldn't flush the toilet, they couldn't listen to the radio. So for 2 years, they lived like that.
Wow.
In 2010, if you want to do a shot of this, this is the chestnut tree that she often talks about in her diary, and it was in the courtyard there. In 2010, it blew down. It had become diseased and blew down. Thankfully, people that realized it was diseased got a lot of saplings from it. And the saplings are planted all over the world. There's several in Israel, there's one at the World Trade Center, one in Washington, D.C. But in 2022, the 13th sapling was planted at the Pentecrest at the University of Iowa.
Oh, how cool is that? That is really something.
So this is the end of the war, and what happened to those in hiding. August, the residents of the secret annex were sent for 2 nights. That's when they were found. People came up and found them, and the Nazis. And then August 7th, they were sent to Westerbork, which was a transit camp. Then in September, they were sent to Auschwitz.
Wow.
The girls, the whole family was at Auschwitz until October. In October, another selection took place, and Anne and Margot were then sent to Bergen-Belsen. In January 1945, Edith Frank died. In March 1945, Margot died of typhus, and a couple days later, Anne died. So Otto was the only survivor of that family.
Wow.
Another story that we had to tell is about Eva Geringer Schloss. Eva, the Geringers lived in Austria, and until the Nazis invaded Austria. Then they too moved to Amsterdam for safety. They lived in the same apartment area that the Frank family did. When the Nazis invaded Amsterdam, they weren't as fortunate. They didn't have a hiding place to go to, so they just, went to whoever would give them shelter. At one point in time, Eric, the father, and Fritzie, the mother, decided that it would be safer for them if they separated. They'd have a better chance of survival. So Eric and the 16-year-old son, Heinz, lived with the family. Fritzie, the mother, and Eva, the daughter, went and lived with another family. While Eric and Heinz were in hiding, they painted. The family realized how talented they were artistically. They painted 30 paintings total. The originals are in the Dutch Resistance Museum in Amsterdam. We have the only full set of copies of them in the world.
Wow.
So they were both very talented. Heinz, the 16-year-old, did all the still life. The father, Eric, did all the portraits. And I always tell groups that come through, he did that portrait by memory. It wasn't like his wife was sitting in front of him and he did that.
That's incredible.
So Eva, then, they all were as well taken to Auschwitz. Eric and Heinz died during the death march. Fritzie and Eva survived. Eva said the only reason she survived was her mother was ill and stayed back in the infirmary, and Eva stayed with her. That's what saved their life. So after liberation, they made their way back to Amsterdam and rekindled their relationship with Otto. At that point in time, Otto had found out from the Red Cross that his family had all died. And Miep, who had kept Anne's diary all together, gave that to Otto for him to publish. At that point in time, Fritzie and Eva decided they needed to get those paintings. They had hid them in the floorboards of the house.
Wow.
So they went to that house and rescued all the paintings. Years later, in 1953, Fritzie married Otto Frank. So Eva Geringer-Schloss is the stepdaughter of Otto. And Eva came to Danville in 2018 to dedicate the paintings to us.
Wow.
She's still living in England. She had her 95th birthday this May. So.
Wow.
Now the other story we have back here is our postcards. If you remember by the original letter, Anne collected postcards. So every year our 8th graders are trying to collect 1.5 million postcards. 11 million people died during the whole Holocaust. 6 million Jews, 1.5 million children. So up there we have over 49,000 postcards. We look at every one that comes in, we count them and band them in groups of 100. And I call people's attention to just visualize that and think of the children, one postcard per child.
It's just, it's so sad. But quite an honor.
Yes.
Tribute.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Now we can go out and see the rail car.
Well, let's wrap up this segment
Okay.
and we'll go outside and see a very unique part of the museum exhibit.
Okay.
I know you're enjoying this episode. We're learning a lot today. And because of that, I want to make sure that you give us a like. One of those thumbs up, right, Bob? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Like, follow, and subscribe. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Janet, we alluded to this exhibit in the previous segment. Tell the audience what we have here.
Well, this is a pre-World War II German cattle car. It was built between 1937 and 1942. The initials over there, DR, it was owned by the Deutsche Reichsbahn, which was the German national railway system. From what I've understood and read, anywhere between 40 and 100 people rode in these cars. So,
And this was intended for cattle.
yes.
And and how many cattle do you think they would have had?
Yeah.
I'm thinking 10 tops.
Probably, because on the inside you have the rings where they tied them to the sides.
And they'd want them to be comfortable.
Right.
But yet the Nazi Germans stuffed 80 people in at a time.
Right.
Into a very similar rail car.
Yep, that's right.
It's
And it's a warm day today. The car's been closed, so you can feel the heat and what it was like to ride in it for those people. The car was refurbished, which means that it's all original. They took all the boards off of it and redid it, but it's all original.
Boy, when you walk in here, it feels like an oven has started, doesn't it, Bob?
You can't imagine watching a video what this feels like and what this looks like and what it represents. It's incredible. It's really incredible, and it needs to be told.
Yes.
Stories that I have read, there were 2 buckets on each side of the corner to provide for them to relieve themselves. As few as 40 people and as many as 100 people would travel on these trains for as much as 4 days. So with no water, no food, all the provisions they brought with them, of course, was taken away from them before they ever got on the train. If they had a suitcase with clothes or if they had a blanket, because they truly thought they were going to go someplace else. They had no idea that they would be boarding a train and where they would be heading. So all of their belongings was taken from them. Eva Geringer, who tells the story, said that at one point in time they stopped the train and ordered with machine guns. The men ordered everybody to give the jewelry, their watches, their wedding rings. So at that point in time, they didn't even know what time it was or what day it was. The only windows were the barred windows up above toward the ceiling, but not enough to bring in much ventilation at all.
And when we first talked about this off camera, you talked about how people were crammed in here so much they were standing up to sleep.
Yes.
And they would wake up in the morning standing, and what would happen sometimes?
Well, there wasn't room to sit down or to lay down to sleep, so they would stand up to sleep, and the person next to them might be leaning against them on their shoulder, and they would try to wake that person up, and the person had died during the night. So the next morning, the men in the train car would pile all the bodies to one side. And again, I can't imagine people getting sick in here, the stench of 4 days and the heat. I think especially of the children.
Yeah, and you think in the modern times that we live in and how pampered we all are, and if someone gets motion sickness, they take a Dramamine, and it's such a big major deal. Folks, that's nothing compared to what people were forced to go through.
And you talk about up to 100 people. This seems much smaller than the cars today, the railroad cars today. It's got to be a third smaller, I would guess, than the cars today. So it's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, our World War II veterans, God bless them, but there's very few of them left.
Yes.
And in the grand scheme of time, in the timeline, this was less than 100 years ago. This happened. And things today are happening in our world that are just as atrocious. And good people need to stand up and help stop that. And they did in World War II.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Janet, I thank you for showing us this and allowing us to share this with our Southeast Iowa Today audience. But I just want to get out of here at this point. I mean, and I hope the people that view this, feel the same way and remember and share this video so that we continue to get that message out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet, as I mentioned earlier, Anne Frank was wise beyond her years, and there's really a neat quote here that I think we should share with the audience.
Okay. Anne's famous quote, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart."
Yes, they are. Janet, not only is this the Anne Frank Pen Pal Museum here in Danville Station, it's also a library for the community.
Yeah, it is. This is our community library. We have lots of things going on every day of the week. In the summer, we have a great summer reading program for the kids that highlights the Olympics this year.
Oh.
We often have special speakers come in to do programs about travel. Saturday, a man came in that's a beekeeper in town.
Nice.
And told about his beekeeping. A lady's coming this coming Saturday that's going to highlight all the Iowa State parks.
Okay.
So we have lots of books. This is our Holocaust education selection. We have a lot of Holocaust books to check out.
Yes, you do. Wow. Incredible. It's just amazing
That it's in Danville, Iowa.
that it is. Danville, Iowa, in southeast Iowa. And I'm day tripping today with Bob DeWitt on southeast Iowa today with John Bain. It just all ties in together. Janet, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the education that you gave us today and your hospitality.
Well, thank you for coming.
You can see after watching this episode why I've got this guy with me. Bob DeWitt knows where to go. Day tripping with Bob DeWitt. And this is right here in southeast Iowa, in Danville, Iowa. And an amazing place. I want to thank Janet again for her tour and all the education that she gave us today. Bob, your thoughts?
If you can't walk into that hot boxcar and think of 100 people in there and not get emotional, you've got no soul. It's just amazing place and so well presented. That boxcar is going to be nice when they get the shelter on it. So
yeah, it's an amazing place. I want to thank you for watching. Bob, thank you for getting us here. And I need to thank our sponsors, Griner Auto Body, Car Doctor, McDonald Boneyard, Hinshaw Trailer Sales, Girling Repair, B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops, and Blue Dog Lawn Care. I'm your host, John Bain. Stay friendly, Southeast Iowa.